Give me the go ahead. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session of uh, the Philanthropy Club of Illinois. And before we get into this, a couple of little housekeeping things. We record this, of course, and then introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're from, a little bit about you, and the things that make you love your job. This is a little bit about the Philanthropy Club. It was founded uh, 2 decades ago by Gus Wilhelmy. And I don't know Gus. I don't know if any of you have ever met him, but it's such an interesting story. He and another gentleman created the Safer Foundation, which is this organization to help people transition from incarceration, among other things. And he's done some really amazing things in his career. He was a monk, he was a priest, he's just kind of a visionary person, or so he seems. Again, I don't know him, but and then the Philanthropy Club is sponsored by Forefront. And Forefront, Emily, do you want to just tell a little bit about or Jessica, what Forefront does?
Sure. We're a statewide association helping the social impact sector in the state. We're a membership organization. We have membership opportunities for grant makers and nonprofits and advisors. And we offer
Okay.
programs. We have a library that can help you find funding for your organization, all sorts of benefits. Take a look.
Yeah.
Please join us.
Yeah, very good. Thanks. This is what we're going to do today. I'll just do a very brief introduction of myself, and then we'll hit upon these points, which include those things that make a good program, how to work your day and your year to do a balance between all of these things. I mean, depending upon your role, and the size of your organization, you may be doing all of the things. You may be doing major gifts, annual giving, and planned giving. But we'll talk a little bit about the things that make a program strong and how to encourage one another. Hit a couple of real life examples, and then we'll do some Q&A. I always start with this. I've done this for many, many years. This relationship cycle has taken a lot of different forms over the years, but essentially it's structured like this. And I've highlighted stewardship because I think, excuse me, from my perspective, that is one of the keystone elements of what we do. If we don't make people feel good about contributing to us, then they will go somewhere else. And that's the essence of stewardship. It's very simple definition, whether they're volunteering or whether they are giving to you small amounts or large amounts. It's really, really important to make people feel that you appreciate it. They're making a difference. So here's a little bit of context. You've probably seen these numbers. This is the latest report. This usually comes out in June from Giving USA, but this gives you a little bit of context about philanthropy and how much is given. And it's very, very encouraging to see that it's up from 2023. And I think 25 may show a similar increase. We haven't seen those numbers yet, but not unexpectedly, the majority of it comes from individuals. And that's continued to increase. Foundations have taken a pretty large leap over the years. When I first started in this field many, many years ago, it was 85% came from individuals, and then 5% or so came from foundations, 5 or 6% from corporations, and assorted other things. Those were kind of the loose numbers. By the way, I actually forgot to introduce myself. I work at the Field Museum. I oversee the planned giving program here, which is the Edward Ayr Society, and I do major gifts as well. And I've been in a number of different elements of this field. I've done annual giving, corporate foundation relations, planned giving, and alumni relations, because I've spent a lot of my time in higher education as well. So anyway, this is a little bit more on that context. This is how this goes. And it's not surprising that religion is at the top if you consider that a lot of people do what we call tithing. You go to church every Sunday and you give a portion of your income to the work of the church. So that's why that number is so large. But education has taken a really big jump this past year, as has the public and society benefit too. And a few little detail observations about the numbers. Um, we have seen this increase in giving, but not surprisingly, we've seen the number of contributors dropping. And that has been a trend for a number of years. With the mega gifts, we see large amounts of money coming into philanthropies, but concerningly, we see the number of people actually dropping. And, that I think we need to do what we can to invite a lot more people to contribute, figure out ways to get support from those people who are sitting on the sideline. And one of those ways is through volunteering. This percentage of volunteers who contribute has been pretty steady for the last few years. And I think it's encouraging that volunteers not only give their time, but they give their money. Affluent families, that is sort of defined by any family with assets of $1 million or more, or income of 200,000. There are lots of different definitions of it out there, but that's a rough thing. But you can see that a large percentage of those give about 10 times what the average middle income families give. And of course, it's not surprising because they've got the resources to do it. But the other interesting thing on this screen is the final point, and that is the fact that DAFs have really increased and continue to increase in numbers. And I think we're going to see that go as people take large portions of their assets and put them into donor advised funds. A couple of things about, at least from my perspective and experience, good programs are all about, and that is we do a really good job of telling people about the value and what we do. Impact sometimes is an overused word, but I think it's fundamental to what we do. How do we change lives? How do we make things better for people? And in that context, too, making sure that somebody who's giving you $25 feels like that's important, as well as somebody who's giving you 2,500, 1,000, or $1 million. I talk about communication, and I sort of differ with some people in this context. I get a little bit annoyed when I get a communication which includes an ask from some of the organizations that I support almost weekly. It almost, I say, let's not do the communication to the extent that we are numbing people. I think it's really important to figure out how to communicate a lot without actually asking. And I think that will have a positive impact on what people do for you, because they know that you need it, but nobody wants to read a thank you and then have an ask at the bottom of it. So, and then, obviously you need to incorporate some strategy in how you're asking people to support you. You're not going to ask somebody for $1 million who doesn't have that capacity to do it, but also don't under ask either. And then again, stewardship. This is, I know this is kind of small on the screen there, but this is kind of a grand picture of what advancement offices look like. And depending upon the size of your organization, you may be one of these persons, or you may be covering several of these in your role. I remember when I first started as an alumni relations director, I did annual fund, I did communications, everything fell on me because I was the only one in the office. But when you look at that previous slide, that's a team of people, and we need to make sure that we do things to encourage everybody on that team. Everybody's role in this in this work is important, from the person who does gift processing to the prospect research to the marketing and communications. All of those things play a role in how we are ultimately able to inspire somebody to give. So I think it's really important to encourage one another on these teams, celebrate the successes, not just when somebody gets $1 million gift, but ding a bell when somebody does something really extraordinary in their job, so that the team feels like we're all contributing to a really important goal that's being met. And I say that last point, stewardship of staff is as important as stewardship of donors. So I think I used this slide a couple of years ago. I really like this because it sort of gives a visual for the work that we do. Very often the one on the left, which is the current giving, the annual fund, that's pretty clear and straightforward. The one on the right is a lot less clear, because planned giving, as you'll see in a couple of minutes, involves the possibility of a lot of different instruments that we would utilize. People define planned giving in different ways, but we'll talk about that in a second. But if you're doing a really good job at both of these, then ultimately the organization is having good success. Talked about creating a good balance in the work that we do. By doing good stewardship and so forth with your annual giving, you are laying that groundwork for somebody to do a planned gift. It's remarkable to me that the people who have been giving here for 25 years at the Field Museum or more, relatively small amounts of money, and then all of a sudden somebody passes away and you will get the most extraordinary planned gift. Sometimes we know that we are in their estate, sometimes we don't. But again, I can't emphasize this point enough of doing stewardship and making people feel good. And to do that, we need to create this sense of confidence that the organization is not only doing good work, but is thriving. Now, I understand these are tough times, so not every organization is getting all of the dollars that you need. But in my first job, I'll never forget this. I went into the president's office. It was a small college, and one of the volunteers had said, "Hey, I think we need to do an annual fund appeal with the visual of the sinking ship. And if you don't give to us, we are going to go down." And the president looked at me and he said, "Bill, never, ever use the sinking ship approach, because it may inspire some people, but other people are going to say, well, if they are sinking, I'm going to put my money somewhere else that's not sinking." So just, it's a good visual to keep in mind. And so as we're talking about planned giving too, I like to talk to people about how that will impact our future. It's a little bit difficult. Obviously, I'm not a back to the future predictor. So, but you can look at the things that we are doing, and we can reasonably say that in 10 or 25 years, here are some of the things that we know that we're going to be continuing to do. Volunteers, as I mentioned, are really important. We have about 500 of them here at the museum. Do an annual event. We don't do it. It comes out of HR, but they do an annual recognition of people's yearly milestones for that. And it really makes those individuals feel pretty good. So sorry. For the planned giving program here, as I mentioned, it's the Edward Ayr Society. You probably know that name, but Edward Ayr was a 19th century businessman here in Chicago, lumberman, made his fortune selling lumber to the railroads, but he's the one who convinced Marshall Field to give the initial $1 million in 1893 to create this. So our planned giving program is named for him. And we do an annual luncheon. We invite people of the Ayr Society to come to other receptions that are typically restricted for other donor categories. Not everybody in the Air Society gives at some of the higher levels, as I said. So we want to make sure that they feel good about being part of that. And this last point here about not replacing current giving with planned giving, I, I I don't see that happening a lot. There are some people to whom you have placed or for whom you've placed a proposal and they say, well, I can't do that now, but I'm going to give it to you in the future. And sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's not. It's kind of an excuse to get out of making a major gift for you now. But okay, these are some of the planned giving instruments that we see around. Bequests, of course, are the most common, but uh, there are a lot of others, and I'll get into some of the definitions of the charitable gift annuities and the donor advised funds and those kinds of things. But um, these are predominantly the instruments. We don't see pooled income funds very much anymore. In fact, we don't see charitable gift annuities a lot. At least we don't here. There are some organizations that use them, but I'll talk about that in a second. So let's start with that. So a CGA, that is when somebody takes a sum of money and they put it into an annuity and they receive a portion of the income. Well, actually, they receive the income from it for the rest of their lives, or if they've put a defined period of time on that. And the percentage payout for a charitable gift annuity increases with age. So if somebody is 85 and they're doing a CGA, they're getting about 8.5% payout on that. And sometimes charitable gift annuities are great for you. Sometimes you don't end up with a lot of the money left over, but it is a mechanism for people to understand philanthropy. I had somebody contact me yesterday about a CGA, and he's 45. So, we'd be paying that out a long time. And if he did a 25,000, the charts indicate that by the time he passes away, we would probably have about a little less than half of that income. A donor advised fund, you pretty much know what those are. There's people do this with an institution. It's usually done when somebody has a windfall, um, and they take that money. They know that they want to contribute that money, but they don't want to contribute it right now. So you'll put it into a donor advised fund, and then you'll quote make recommendations to the institution that's holding that fund, and they will contribute those funds to the organization that you choose. Charitable lead trust is it's in the same family as the remainder trust. A lead trust is where somebody takes the money, puts it into an investment trust, and then the institution takes the income for a period of time. It could be 25 years, could be 35 years. We did one at DePaul where I was working before, and it was a 25-year lead trust. And then at the end of that period, the principal goes back to the estate of the person. Remainder trust is just the opposite. They take that $1 million or whatever the amount is, and they take the income for their lives, or again for a period of time, and then that at the end of that period or at the end of that life or the secondary life, the funds come to the institution. I use two of these platforms for plan giving here at the field. I use Stelter for periodic communication. We do some emails through them. We do a survey with them every 2 years. Free Will, I just signed on with them last year for a 2-year contract. I don't know if we're going to continue beyond 2 years, but it was a very interesting first year. We had, when I first came here, we had about 150 people who were in the Plan Giving Society, people or family units. And when I went with Free Will this past year, we ended up with 25 just out of that, and then few more out of Stelter. And so it is an opportunity for people to create a will without a cost and then they have the opportunity to select you as a beneficiary, or if you go on the free will site as a donor, you can select other organizations that are on that site. Pantera is another long-standing platform. I used them years ago, and Crescendo. I've never used them, but they're also very good. These are some of the things to think about when getting information out about your planned giving program. Again, start with board members and volunteers and other people who are close to you. Most people who engage in a planned gift are, in fact, between 40 and 50, but I actually have a couple of Air Society members in their 30s. It was really fun to see that happen, and hopefully it'll be a long, long time before we see those come to fruition. Information can be gotten out in a whole lot of different ways. You utilize all of these, I'm sure, but the survey that I do through Stelter every 2 years, we pick a number of people out of the database. We don't send it to the same people every time, but we ask questions about their understanding of the institution and their impressions of what we do. And then some of the questions at the end are, would you consider placing the field in your estate plans? Have you considered, or you're not interested at all? And we get quite a variety of responses for that. I have not done an estate planning seminar here. I know there's some organizations that do really good ones, and that, in fact, may be something you want to try, where you get an expert in estate planning and invite your key donors and volunteers to be a part of that in ways that would help them understand philanthropy. There are a lot of people who are sophisticated, a lot of donors who are, but there are some things that people aren't aware. For example, you're familiar with the term QCD, which is a qualified charitable distribution out of an IRA. You know, when you become a certain age, 73, 72 and a half, 3, you are required by the IRS to take minimum distributions from your IRA. So you can take that distribution and turn it into a contribution, which means that not only are you helping an organization, you are saving taxes on that because you're not required to pay tax on that. And then you can use the resources that you would normally make that contribution with for other things. So that's a QCD. Again, people are of lots of different minds about planned giving societies. I personally think it's a really good idea because it gives people here at the field an identity, and they we just did our luncheon 2 weeks ago, and they absolutely loved it. We did a programmatic focus in this particular case on ancient Egypt and Edward Ayer's acquisition of things from Egypt back in the early 1900s. And it was a very wonderful program, but it also helped people understand more about the museum and how their future dollars would have an impact on that. And there are lots of different ways of thinking about how people get into the society. Some organizations are pretty strict that you have to have a document that says, like, a will or something. I have what's called, and I'm happy to send this to anybody, it's called an Air Society estate gift confirmation form. And at the very top, it says this is a non-binding form, and it gives people the opportunity to talk about what their intentions are for the institution. Are we going to get a percentage of their estate? Are we going to get a specific amount? Is it undetermined at this point? What does it look like in terms of its structure? Is it going to be a bequest? Will it be stock? Will it be something else? That form outlines all of that for the people to sign. And people are generally willing to sign it because it does say non-binding. And of course, you probably know this already, but unless somebody signs an irrevocable trust, pretty much all estate gifts are non-binding. I mean, you can change a will, and what somebody did 10 or 15 years ago can go away. So I think it's important to put that in there, that it's a non-binding thing. Um, again, make people feel special. Why should they be a part of this? What are the benefits that they get? You, like we at the field, have donors who don't really care that much about the benefits or the recognition. And then there are other people for whom that's a really, really important thing. If we were all in a room together right now and I said, um, why do people give to you? Um, there probably would be about 10 or 15 different answers. And they run the gamut from they believe in what you're doing to a friend of theirs contributes, so they want to, or they want to do something for their community. It really ranges, but in our roles, we work with these prospects and donors to determine what inspires them to give. Um, I won't go into a lot of these real life examples, but um, as I said in the beginning, you will get gifts from people that you don't know about. In fact, I've done an analysis of our giving here historically, and I would say the majority of planned gifts have come from people that we didn't know about, or they were far greater than we knew about. And we just had a really interesting one, and I can share this because I won't give you his name, but he told me I could share this, and that is there was a guy who came here, was working on security about 2 or 3 years ago, and then he left in January. Nobody knew this except perhaps the people in security, but this guy was wrongfully imprisoned for 34 years. And the museum gave him a job when he was finally released. And he got quite an amazing settlement. And he has now made the museum a beneficiary of his estate, in addition to making some pretty generous gifts. There was a person who was a $300 contributor when I first came, and she had passed away. And her attorney said to me, well, she had made a $250,000 commitment to you, but that's now changed. Her estate is giving you 940,000, and you're one of 5 organizations sharing that similar amounts of money. And nobody who knew her had any idea. And the purpose for my bringing this up is that, and you probably do this, you look at the people who don't look like they've got millions of dollars and just make sure that you are paying attention to them and making them feel really good, because it's those people who live understated lives very often. They have a depression mentality, or they had family members who had that, and they're careful savers. And if they don't have family members and you're high on their list, you become the beneficiary of some very generous support. Just a few things on planned giving. And this is why platforms like Free Will or Stelter are really important. It's hard to believe that almost 70% of adults in America do not have a valid will. And depending upon the state, that can be problematic for families. Some require estates to go into probate, some don't. But so conveying that message to your donor population and giving them an opportunity to do a will, either through a seminar or if you take on free will or something like that, I think is a way that will get people in your world to make a will. And again, planned gifts obviously are larger typically than what somebody gives. 200 to 300 times larger is not unusual. In fact, it sometimes is more than that. Um, again, as you might expect, the majority of bequests, or a lot of them, come from people who are older, but surprisingly, there's a percentage that come from people who are not yet 55. We talked about the percentage of planned gifts that are made by bequests. Um, in my experience, the plan giving rarely competes with a major gift. It usually It augments, and the planned gift often comes from people who aren't doing major gifts as well, as I said earlier. Um, but the second point is really important. We have something called the Legacy Society here at the field. It's for people who give 20 years or more. And historically, people within the Air Society have been individuals who have supported the museum for a long, long time. And they've supported it for a long time because people in the past have done a good job of making them feel good about that support. As I mentioned, not all planned gifts are deferred. Some are in those instruments that we outlined earlier. Um, Clearly, if somebody doesn't have kids, they're more likely to do a planned gift. Um, and this third point is really, really important. I remember this all the time that I'm sitting here and I get notified from an attorney that somebody has left this large estate gift to us. Uh, it's not because of me. Um, I didn't necessarily work with that person. Somebody else did in the past. So um, the reason I bring this up is that the work we do now, we may not see come to fruition. Uh, Somebody else down the road will do that. One of my favorite examples of this is I was working at a university in New York, and I was working with a faculty member on a $10 million bequest. And he'd made a lot of his money because of patents, and then because he gave all his money to Warren Buffett to invest. And um, I left there, and about 10 years later, he had passed away, his wife had passed away, and that $10 million had become $100 million. And so the person who was in my position at that point, looks heroic because this $100 million planned gift came in, even though that person didn't have anything to do with it. But that's just the reality of what we do. We lay the groundwork for future support like that. Okay, just a couple of final things. As I mentioned earlier, it's a team effort. A lot of people who work with us help make sure that the work we do comes to fruition. Um, these are some of the reasons, as I said earlier, if you sat in a room and said, why do people give? These are some of the reasons why people would give to you. Um, they're all over the place. Um, and again, this is the really important one. They have good feelings about the gift that they gave to you before. So finally, um, years ago when I was first out of college, I worked for a guy who did listening seminars. And one of my favorite statements from him was, don't listen with your answer running. And it's a very important thing. You have probably been in conversations with people and you are talking or somebody else is talking and you can see that they just can't wait for you to finish so that they can say something. That is the surest way of not finding out good things about the donors and the people that are in this universe that we want so much to be a part of. Um, Throw questions out, sit back and listen, and people will tell you some of the most remarkable things if you are a listener. It's not important all the time to share everything under the sun about our organizations. Obviously, we want people to know that, but make sure that people that we are working with understand that you're very interested in what they have to say. Be a gracious person and a genuine person in all you do. I think I said this once before. You probably do the New York Times games, and I start Wordle every morning with the word grace for a couple of different reasons. It's not a bad word to start with because it has a lot of the letters that often show up. But that's not the reason I do it. I do it as a reminder to go through this day and be a grace grace-filled person. I'm not always. If you saw me get mad at people on the Lakeshore Drive, you would say, "Whoa, he's not gracious." But um, that's my goal every day is to be somebody who's filled with grace in my relationships and what I do in this work. Um, and this is a really important point too. Give them more than they really expect. Make them feel, wow, I only gave them $100, but they made me feel like I gave 1,000. That takes a lot of different forms, but it'll come back. Uh, it, there's a statement about bread cast upon the water will come back to you. Um, and it will, if you create this feeling among people, among your donors that you're doing good work and that you really care about them, that'll come back. Um, and finally, just be an observant person. When I go out to visit people in their offices or their homes, I look at the walls and on the desks and on the counters and at the things that they have. Are they interested in art? Um, is their granddaughter a scout or a star athlete or something? Just pay attention. That seems so obvious, but sometimes we don't. So, are there any questions? And um, Emily or Jessica, how many people do we have? Can we just open it up to a verbal, or do you want to do it in the chat?
Hey, we could definitely do a verbal. We've got a few, it's an intimate room. We don't have any questions currently in the chat. So I think,
Yeah, please. And not just questions. If you've got some wisdom to share, please feel free to do that.
Bill, I've got a question for you, but I'll start off by saying that I'm an adieu and crane first person on Wordle.
Oh, are you really?
I
Okay.
am. I know I'm bucking the system, but I've decided to go with it. But I love grace. That's very cool. 90%, that metric that you shared, the bequest, is that revenue or is it number of bequests vis-a-vis versus other kinds of planned gifts?
It's dollars.
Okay.
Yeah, it's dollars. So, yeah, I I think it's really interesting. We have two CGAs here at the field. You would think that an organization of this size would have a lot more of them. Yeah, there are two, and nobody has taken a CGA since I have come. I came here 3.5 years ago, but
Yeah.
well, part of it is I haven't marketed it, but yeah, there's still yeah,
And I think it's
and
still the case that the reason for that um, is that we're not in the plan giving space, we're not marketing some of those more esoteric vehicles. We're really foregrounding bequests because those bequest revenue that comes tends to be much larger than the gifts that come in as a result of the charitable major trust, charitable unit trust, charitable lead trust, those kinds of the other gift annuities, other kinds of vehicles. Is that still the case? It used to be.
it is, yeah, very much. Um, yeah, I think we get a lot of people contributing through DAFs as you guys do.
Yep.
But other than yesterday, when I got this inquiry from this young guy about a CGA, not a single person has inquired about it. And all of that stuff is on our website. If you were to go on, just do plan giving on the Field Museum's website, you will ultimately see all of those things outlined. And there's a CGA calculator on there, which can be very helpful if somebody is thinking about that. There are a couple of other calculators on there as well. And by the way, that's all, it looks like it's generated by the Field Museum, but that's part of our Stelter
Yeah.
contract. So,
So
yeah. Richard, where are you, by the way?
I am in suburban Philadelphia,
Oh,
Wayne,
nice.
Pennsylvania. Yep.
No kidding. What do you do out there?
Yep. I do fundraising consulting.
Okay. Oh, nice. Very good. Other
Bill,
questions or comments?
Bill Kate has her hand raised.
Yeah, do it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, as I'm driving, I didn't want to talk over anybody. Um, My question, Bill, is I'm always really intrigued by, every time I read a study, it says some, I think it's usually like the majority of people who end up leaving a planned gift after their death don't actually tell the institution that's receiving the gift. And I know that you touched on this a little bit, right? So the idea of looking in your database for folks who maybe they don't look like that $100 million donor, but they're giving consistently or they're giving across a number of years. I'm just wondering if you can speak a little more about that in terms of, like, in very practical ways, how does it change your approach? And is your overarching goal kind of to get more people to fill out your form so you have an idea of which planned gifts might be in the pipeline? Or are you approaching it more, well, a lot of people won't tell us, so let me provide that really good perpetual stewardship to all the folks who might give? I'm not sure that makes sense as a question, but I hope.
No, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I also want to say thank you for sharing all those stories. The one of the security guard that's quite
Oh
touching.
my gosh.
What a great
I
example of community.
This is the first time I've been able to talk about it without actually choking up.
Yeah.
It is so tender. And he is the nicest guy. You would think somebody who has spent 34 years in prison wrongfully, that he would be so angry and vindictive. And he is not. He is, oh my gosh. If you ever, yeah, he's just a wonderful guy. It's a terrific story. But yes, so I I talk to team members here. You know, stewardship is just, I can't, I know I keep saying that, but I can't say it enough. Um, and sometimes I've even seen it here, but I've seen it at other organizations that if somebody's not giving you 4, 5, 6 figure gifts, it's not really important to pay attention to them as much as you do the other folks. And I'm not saying don't pay attention to the people who are giving you large gifts. Obviously, that's a really critical thing. And I realize that we only have so much bandwidth, but I do everything I can to make sure somebody who is giving even small amounts of money feels good. I will do a little research, of course, but I'll invite people for behind the scenes tours who aren't giving us $1,000 or something. And I think that it's those things that will ultimately pay those long-term dividends. You know, fascinating. Another story. So last year, I was notified by TIAA, which is a retirement firm, as you know, and they said, you have been designated as the recipient of a person's IRAs. And because you're the only one, you have to provide the death certificate, which is kind of an unusual thing. So so I contacted them. I said, so you're telling me that this person has passed away. I didn't know this person has passed away. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know this person. And I have to do the death certificate. But that's the way TI is. So ultimately, 6 months later, I was able to track that down. Oh, I did say to this person, so can you at least tell me where she died? And it was some small town in North Carolina. So you would think that I could go there, find an obituary for this person. There were 3 people with her name who've died in that small town in the last 10 years, none of whom were her. It was the most peculiar set of circumstances. But the short story is we finally got this, and we got 2 IRAs totaling $211,000 from this person that I still have no idea how we were connected with her. She was East Coast, went to school on the East Coast, worked on the East Coast as a university professor, not even related to this field. Yeah, it's really strange. So that doesn't answer your question, Kate, but I'm just of the mind that this is going to continue. A lot of people are going to give to you and not tell you. And so therefore, do everything you can to make donors understand that you do this, that you accept these estate gifts, that if you can create an entity to recognize them. And so people here have the opportunity of being anonymous, if you will, in the Air Society. A lot of people don't. I'd say the majority of the people don't mind having their names out there. We list them in the annual report. Yes, we still do a printed annual report, and we list them as being members of the Air Society. Did I answer your question, Kate?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I think I hear so much, and I myself, like put a lot of energy into talking about the gifts we can accept. And sometimes I find myself frustrated. Well, we're not really seeing, people haven't filled out our form, or people aren't indicating that they're leaving a gift. But A, that doesn't mean they're not going to, and B, it doesn't take away from the gracious stewardship that you've been talking about. And thanks again. That's another great story, the woman whose death certificate you had to find.
Yeah, it's and North Carolina is much easier than Illinois. I initially had to do one for Illinois too, but it was much more complicated.
Bill, we have one more.
Yeah, sure. Go
One more
ahead.
hand raised. Haley.
Hi, yeah. I had a question about the benefits that you offer the Air Society. So, I'm assuming that the field also has a membership program, and at Griffin MSI, some of our Rosenwald Society members, which is our plan giving society, also hold other memberships. And I recently had a conversation with someone who didn't realize they got benefits because they have us in their plans. And so wanting to make sure that we're stewarding them and not, you know, asking them to give us a membership that doesn't really make sense. How have you navigated some of that?
Yeah, so and again, I'm happy to share this with anybody as well. You probably have these. I have a document in addition to the estate gift confirmation form. I have a document which is the Air Society member benefits, and it it talks about the annual luncheon. It talks about selected exhibit opening receptions that members will be invited to. Right now, if you are a member of the Founders Council, which is 2,500 and up, you get invited to a lot of these receptions, more so than obviously other people who are giving smaller amounts. But for some of these, we also invite Air Society members who are not Founders Council members. And they really appreciate that. Because quite often, and this is a little bit hard for staff in the department and outside of the department to grasp sometimes, those estate gifts inevitably are going to be larger than what somebody's giving annually, and even cumulatively annually. So, you're taking a chance, you're having faith that somebody is truthful in what they've said about their estate plans and that they aren't going to change their minds. Other people do. But you have to have faith in people and then reward that faith by at least giving them some modicum of recognition. Does that make sense, Hallie?
Yeah. Feels
Is
like
it Hallie or Haley?
it is Hallie. Mhm.
Hallie. Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah. And then we list one of the things I did not talk about in the instrument, I think we still have a few more minutes, is perpetual trusts. I do a report, an ongoing report of the bequests. They're called expectancies and received. So at any point, I can look at this report and know that there are 5 perpetual trusts that are going to benefit us this year. And then I can say, oh, well, I've heard from this attorney last year, and we know that we're going to be receiving these gifts. And then I have the surprise gifts. But that report articulates those perpetual trusts, which somebody set up 20 years ago, and it might have a life cycle of 30 years, or it might be 20, or it might be forever. So that's another instrument too. We have just a couple more minutes left. Any other questions or comments? Oh, okay. Before we do that then, coming up in June, on June 2nd, Aaron and Audra are going to be presenting on humanizing foundations. And here's the description, but you can also go on the wonderful Forefront site and see this description. And that's my contact information. Feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to share any of the documents with you. Or if you've got something that you think is really fantastic that you'd like to share with me, I'd love to learn. I'd love to see what other people are doing. Hello, Susan.
So Kate has her hand raised.
Okay. Yeah, Kate.
Yeah, if we have time for one more.
Yeah.
Bill, the conversation about recognition sparked something else in me. I'm wondering if you have any success stories or examples of what we might call like a blended gift. So, for example, I have a donor who I would really like to make a planned gift, and his answer is, but I want my recognition now. So I'm trying to say, give us some money to jumpstart this program now. We'll put your name on it. You can enjoy it. And then, but think about, funding it in perpetuity going forward, like establishing some kind of an endowment. And I'm just,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering how common that's been in your work, and what's been helpful to convince folks about that, I guess.
Were you eavesdropping all this past week? Oh my gosh. Yeah, there is a person who wants to do a planned gift, but wants some current recognition for that. This is I don't know who this person is. He's being the couple. But they're interested in what the recognition opportunities would be. And so it's a very delicate thing, because there are certain things here that we could do, like we could recognize a portion of a gallery or a position or a research fund or things like that. It just depends on what that looks like in terms of what we will actually allow to be recognized. For example, if we're going to do a renovation of a gallery, there's no way in the world that we're going to name that gallery for somebody who's doing a gift that we won't see for 10 or 20 or more years. But if it's a gallery that is already in place, there's a small amount of maintenance that needs to be embarked on every couple of years, it's possible that we would do a recognition. But getting back to the point you said about making some current contribution, that's a really important thing, because it shows a commitment on their part. If somebody's willing to give you $1 million in their estate, it's surely likely that they could take a portion of that gift and do it now. I'm working with another gentleman on a research fund. He has been making these annual contributions, and it's slowly getting to the threshold that we have for named funds, which is 250,000. But there is this promise that there's going to be an estate portion as well. So there's a blended gift. We have these discussions all the time about blended gifts. I don't know if any of the rest of you do. Or Richard, you've encountered that in your work.
I can provide context within a capital campaign. Often I'm working with clients where where there's always if there's going to be a blended gift and there's a naming opportunity associated with it, we've made the decision that given the fact that these particular donors are so close to us, 50% has to be cash, 50% can be legacy, and the naming opportunity really becomes the stewardship of that legacy gift coming down the pike. But these are I mean, it was a controversial decision because right, we don't have the resources to spend on that particular thing now. It would come later, but given that these are very special donors, we were able to make that case, but only at a certain level and above for the capital campaign.
Okay. Oh, so by the way, we're in the quiet phase of a campaign, and there is going to be a fairly significant portion of this campaign that involves planned gifts.
Great idea.
Yeah, they've made the decision to do it. I was very, very pleased about that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's been set yet in terms of percentage, but yeah, that's a really encouraging thing.
And we found that it doesn't really have an effect, just like you were saying earlier, it doesn't have an effect on cash gifts that are required for whatever the campaign's financial aspirations are over a 5-year period, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and the way you do it so say it's a $100 million campaign, and 25 million of it is legacy. Once you hit that 25 million, you may wind up going over it, but when you're counting towards goal, obviously you want to make sure that any overage on the legacy side doesn't have an impact on the fact that you still have a cash goal to achieve in order to make the campaign a success, right? So if you go over by 5 million, it doesn't mean you got less to raise on the cash side. You just have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good luck with it. Hope it goes well.
Yeah, thanks. So Jessica, what's our time? Do we have any other questions? Do we need to do a hard stop?
It's 10:03. We don't have any hands raised, but
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for taking part in this. And it's an intimate group, but a great group. And again, feel free to reach out to me, but also share anything that you have that you're doing that that you think is really spectacular. I'd love to see that too.
Thanks,
All
Bill.
right.
Great to meet you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. And then join us June 2nd, everyone. All right.
Sure will.
Thank you very much, Jessica and Emily, for helping out.
I